What we're now going to do is we're going to move on to the employees module. And the employees module is where we define the people that we can assign to jobs, that we can create timesheets for, basically the people that your technicians that do work for you. We also define in here the users of TSM who might want to log in and actually make use of TSM. And we can also use this if we wanted to create pseudo employees, which are contractors, subcontractors, who you'll treat like employees but aren't really employees, they're subcontractors in here. So pretty much anyone that's going to use TSM or be used within TSM is defined here in the employees module. Some pretty standard stuff to start with: name, address. Let's just bring up somebody. Okay, so it's name, address, phone numbers, and so on. These are all things that you would expect. Date commenced, date completed. That's all pretty standard stuff. So now the things that are interesting, our hourly cost is where we can put in the hourly cost that applies to this employee, and this cost will automatically go against timesheets in terms of the cost of that labour per hour. So we can start to get profitability on a employee by employee basis, a timesheet basis in terms of what they're costing. We can add in fixed overheads if they are, and you may calculate there's a $2.50 overhead or something per hour against employees for standard work 9 to 5. And then we can have a variable overhead which applies to outside of standard hours, which is typically covers things like additionals, workers' compensation, or other expenses that you may incur out of the standard 9 to 5 hours. So you can put a variable overhead, and it'll add those to the base cost to calculate an overall cost that it puts against the timesheets for you. You can also have an hourly allowance, which is another cost entry. It might be $2 an hour or something that you give them for meals or whatever it happens to be. And the last cost figure that's very important is a base cost. And the base cost is an override of this, whereby if you put in a base cost, this will be used for profitability calculations as opposed to their actual cost. Why would you want a base cost? Because you may want to standardize your costing for profitability as an average across all employees and not want to break it down to individual employees. Some are paid more, some are paid less. You just want to know that our average cost is $50 an hour. That's the base cost we're going to use for profitability calculations. There is a system default base cost that you can set up. This is purely an override for this particular employee. Maybe you have, for example, all apprentices at one particular cost and all senior managers at another cost, and so on. For multi-location stock control purposes, you can set a default location here. Typically this is going to be the van ID that this particular employee is working out of, so that automatically stock will come out of those particular vans.
Is that like a warehouse?
Yes, correct, exactly. It's just
so
like
you can
warehouse.
drop ship directly to that specific location.
Yes, but it's more just simply the default location when we add parts to decrement stock is really what that's used for. For example, on our TSM remote solution, we assume their location. We don't have a field for them to choose a location because it's just an unnecessary field. It'll just use this particular location. We can also set up a security group for this person, which will define exactly that, what rights they have within the system, a particular service area that they service, so that if we wanted to, for example, give a list of all employees in the northern region for work, we could do that. A default labour type for this employee, maybe once again the apprentice has a different standard labour type than a regular type of employee, and so on. Up the top here, I'm going to skip over a lot of this stuff until we get onto TSM Remote, so I really won't go into this very much at all. We can select a colour for this employee, which will be used on the visual scheduler. to identify people. So that's nice. And that's probably all the important things for here. I mentioned in the customer module you can set qualifications and so on. So on the qualifications tab is where you define what kind of qualifications this particular employee has, and to match up against those other requirements. You can also set a list of activities that they are capable of. That's another filter that we could use. So they may, for example, know about networking, or they may know about how to set up a server, or they may have some other particular skill that they can be assigned here, which will also be able to be filtered back. Give me anyone who's got this particular skill. It's not a qualification, it's more a skill or some other activity that they are assigned to. And we can also put insurance information here. So for some companies, the fact that they have a current insurance becomes important as well. Often in TSM we want to deal with groups of employees, for example. So we can assign employees to a group. So these are all the groups that we've got set up, for example. There could be a whole bunch of them. It might be the consulting group, or the service group, or the Northern Region group, or the ABC group, or the whatever you want to call it group. So you can assign people to multiple different groups, and various places in TSM it requests a group that it does things to the members of those groups. So when we get to that, I'll show you that. We can create a photo for this particular employee. We can set up the postcodes of this employee's services. One of the options, once again, an employee, when we use on a job, is to choose an employee from your area. And so by the postcode of the customer, we can then match employees to postcodes. Same as before, we can have whatever linked documents attached to this particular employee. We can do a little chat within TSM for employees, and this is the chat history that we have backwards and forwards, and any emails relevant to that particular employee in and out are listed here in the email tab. So that's pretty much the employees module. Employees, once again, as I mentioned, are important because unless you set somebody up, you can't use TSM in here. You set up your technicians in here. You set up your contractors in here. So that is the employees module.